The 7th Cricket World Cup was played over 5 weeks in England, where it came back after 16 years. Australia won the final, thrashing an uninspired Pakistan in World Cup cricket's most one-sided final. It was a remarkable climax from Australia, who, despite being favourites before the tournament began, started shakily by losing to New Zealand and Pakistan. They were on the verge of being knocked out of the tournament, but they came back ruthlessly and won 6 games in a row and were clearly at their peak in the final. It all started in the game against West Indies. If Australia had lost, they would be out of the World Cup. Glenn McGrath, on the eve of the match, said he would take 5 wickets and take out Lara, the best batsman in the world then. Riding on this bizarrely concocted pressure, he took 5 for 14 in 9 overs, including Lara with perhaps the ball of the tournament, pitching middle and removing the off bail. West Indies were dismissed for a meagre 110 and Australia won easily. As many as 6 Australians had tournament-defining performance, that is, high-impact performances in the semi-final or the final. Shane Warne, Glenn McGrath, Adam Gilchrist, Michael Bevan, Tom Moody and Steve Waugh. Steve Waugh, in fact, was the highest-impact batsman in the tournament. His masterpiece and the second highest impact one-day innings he ever played was at the last Super 6 match against South Africa, losing which would have knocked them out of the tournament. At 48 for 3, chasing 272, Australia were in trouble when Waugh walked in. He stabilized the situation with Ponting first and then with Bevan before hitting out himself. His unbeaten 120 off 110 balls helped Australia win in the last over and fashioned a rematch in the semi-finals. Halfway through that innings, Waugh was dropped by Herschel Gibbs, a sitter where he tried to celebrate too soon. Even though Waugh did not actually say, "You just dropped the World Cup, mate," as the myth now goes, that mistake turned out to be the most significant one of the tournament. Their semi-final is still considered the finest one-day game ever played. In a tense, low-scoring match where fortunes kept swinging, Steve Waugh's 56 and Michael Bevan's 65 somehow got Australia to 213. Then, at 48 for no loss, South Africa were cruising when Shane Warne came in and took 2 wickets within a space of just 5 runs. The first one that mimicked the famous ball of the century that had got Mike Gatting years ago. Callis, Rhodes and Pollock took the score closer, and then Lance Klusener hammered 31 of just 16 balls to make it a simple 1 run required of 4 balls. Yet, Klusener and Donald had a brain freeze while trying for a quick single. Donald was run out and the tag "chokers" well and truly got established. The match was tied, but Australia went through because of that classic victory against South Africa just 4 days ago. South Africa, perhaps feeling their greatest one-day international team till date, was left gutted. They had been close favourites with Australia before the tournament, but this just left them stranded. Hansie Cronje, one of South Africa's highest impact one-day players ever, would not play a World Cup again for tragic reasons. And Bob Woolmer, the South African coach, who had helped immensely in giving South Africa a 73% success rate, would never coach South Africa again, though his tragedy would strike 2 World Cups later. Despite not reaching the final, the highest impact player in the tournament was South Africa's Lance Klusener. Actually, it is astonishing. He did not get a tournament-defining performance, but with a failure rate of 0% in 9 matches, his outstanding all-round performance gave him a reputation he found hard to match up to later. He made just 216 runs and was 12th on a runs tally list for the tournament. His highest score was just 52 in 8 innings. But with a strike rate impact which was twice that of anyone else in the tournament, he consistently put his team in a good position right through the tournament just when they needed it. Despite batting at number 8, he was the most consistent batsman for South Africa. An astonishing fact again. He was South Africa's second highest impact bowler too, after just Alan Donald. His tally of 17 wickets, the 4th highest in the tournament. An interesting story in this World Cup is of Gavin Hamilton from Scotland. Out of the 5 innings Scotland played in the tournament, Hamilton was the highest scorer for his team 4 times. Despite being 18th on a runs tally list, He was the second highest impact batsman in the tournament. Any of the other prominent sides would have embraced him warmly that summer. These were incidentally the first ODI matches Hamilton played in his 38-match ODI career. He also played a test match for England later that year, his only one. Ridley Jacobs, the West Indian wicketkeeper, had a great tournament with the bat as well. He was the fourth highest impact batsman in the World Cup and had the highest runs tally impact in the tournament, that is, runs scored by the batsman in proportion to runs scored in the matches he played in, despite being a staggering 22nd on the runs tally list conventionally. Along with Hamilton, he was the only other batsman to have a 0% failure rate. The man with the highest runs tally conventionally, Rahul Dravid, who silenced his critics forever about his one-day batting prowess, was 8th on the impact charts for batting. India was middling in the tournament despite promising a lot in fits and starts. They lost to Zimbabwe and South Africa, but then beat Sri Lanka and England. They lost to Australia and New Zealand in the Super Sixes, but customarily beat Pakistan, as they bizarrely have in every world event till date. Given that the Kargil war had just begun, it satisfied a lot of Indians back home, despite the bigger picture being rather bleak. Sachin Tendulkar made a much hyped return to the tournament that he had to leave midway due to his father's sudden death. He made 143 against a hapless Kenya and earned hosannas from the besotted Indian press, but overall had a poor tournament, being the lowest impact specialist Indian batsman with a 57% failure rate. India's highest impact player was, interestingly, Robin Singh. He was not the only all-rounder to be his team's highest impact player. Lance Klusener, Neil Johnson, Wasim Akram, Thomas Odoyo, Chris Keynes all were the highest impact players for their respective teams. Jacques Kallis and Abdul Razak were high impact too. Interestingly, the side that had the highest impact batsman and bowler in the tournament, Australia, won it. The highest impact bowlers were rather predictable. Shane Warne and Glenn McGrath right on top. Ambrose and Walsh followed. The highest impact spinner after that was Muralitharan at number 19. This was an English summer after all. Seamer Jeff Allett of New Zealand took the most wickets but was 12th on the impact list. He was outstanding in those conditions but badly missed his injured partner Simon Doull, who would bowl spectacularly in the Test series just after, when New Zealand famously beat England. Despite having too many all-rounders and not enough specialists, New Zealand were a very good one-day side. Chris Keynes was their highest impact player. He was at his peak as a player then, which would further manifest in the Mini World Cup next year that New Zealand would win. Roger Toos was their highest impact batsman. He should be more famous for being the batsman who has absorbed the most pressure in the history of one-day internationals. And in this tournament as well, he absorbed the most pressure for his team, New Zealand. Interestingly, he was the highest impact chaser in this tournament from across all the sides. Sadly for New Zealand, their bowling attack was found out badly against Pakistan in the semi-final when conditions stopped favouring their part-timers. The underrated and high-impact Saeed Anwar's crackling 100 made it a very one-sided game in the end. But Pakistan could not carry their formidable form into the final. Despite losing to India as a World Cup habit, and bizarrely to Bangladesh in somewhat odd circumstances, after which Wasim Akram said he was happy to have lost to his brothers, and a close match against South Africa, they did seem to be the only side that could match Australia or South Africa in the final. Sadly, they were blown away by the Australian bowling for a meagre 132 in the final, and Australia finished the match off in 20 overs. It was the beginning of a period of intimidating domination by Australia in all forms of the game. They would ruthlessly terrorize many teams in a manner that the great West Indian teams of the late 1970s and the 80s could not. It would show in the results.